Hello, everyone. Welcome to our Estrella Virtual Visit Series. My name is Allison Campbell with Estrella Consulting, and I am so excited to welcome Allie Carter from the University of Pittsburgh. Our virtual visit series is designed to introduce all of you to a variety of colleges and allow for you to get to know the institutions and their staff in a more personal way. So thank you, Allie, for taking the time to join us.
Thank you for having me, Allison. It's nice to be here.
We appreciate it. So if you don't mind, just really briefly tell us a little bit about yourself and how long you've been at Pitt.
Sure. So I'm originally from Northeast Ohio. So I am a big Guardians fan. I spent some time on the West Coast. I worked for San Diego State and Oregon State, got my master's degree at San Diego State, and then came back home to Ohio last year, where I now live in Columbus with my husband. And I work for the University of Pittsburgh as the Midwest Enrollment Services Manager, so the Midwest Admissions Counselor. So I will have been at Pitt for 1 year coming up this summer.
That's great. So you're not a Pitt alum?
I am not an alum. I am a George Mason alum.
All right, very cool. So you've been all over the place. You're Northeast
Yes.
Ohio, we're in Metro DC, we're on the West Coast and
Yeah.
in the good old Midwest. That's great. It's hard to beat the Midwest, except for the weather. We were just discussing how your background is so beautiful, and that is certainly not indicative of the weather that we're having today. So high hopes that we have those beautiful tulips and some sunshine here very soon. So University of Pittsburgh, I'm from the Youngstown area, so I'm pretty familiar with Pitt. I've been to Pitt. It's kind of like equidistant between Cleveland and Pittsburgh, but I'd love for you to explain to people, tell us about Pitt, tell us about the type of institution you are, the enrollment, kind of the vibe on campus and the location. So go ahead.
We are located in a neighborhood called Oakland, which is 3 miles from downtown Pittsburgh. So it's urban, but not downtown, which is kind of an important distinction because it's not all concrete and tall buildings. You will see flowers and trees and pretty things on campus, kind of get that, campus feel. But being in an urban environment, it's really great that students can get connected to the city of Pittsburgh as well as to campus. So we have about 20,000 undergraduate students, nice mid-sized university. We're also considered a tier 1 research university from the Carnegie classifications. So students who are looking for those research opportunities all throughout their undergraduate experience, even as early as their first year, might want to look at Pitt as somewhere to check out. We have a lot of opportunities for students to get involved on campus, over 800 clubs and organizations. We do have Greek life, we have Division I athletics. Most of those events are free for students to attend. One of the cool things is that for about $50, they can get season tickets for football. And then they get to see the Panthers play at Acrisure Stadium, probably better known as Heinz Field, which is where the Steelers play. So it's a really cool environment for students. Even if they're not that interested in football, it's kind of a fun social thing to do on the weekends. And then we also try to connect them to the city of Pittsburgh itself. A lot of student discounts at restaurants around campus that will take their meal plans as well. We also have something called Pitt Arts, where students can get connected to different arts programs in Pittsburgh, get free or discounted admissions to all the museums in Pittsburgh, places like the Pittsburgh Symphony and the theater. We also have discounted sports tickets for all the professional sports teams in Pittsburgh. So a lot of cool ways for them to get connected to the city, kind of socially, culturally, and then of course for things like job shadowing and internships.
Yeah, there's so many wonderful perks to being in a large metropolitan area. The urban campus feel can sometimes be a pro or a con for some students. If you're really thinking of like a quintessential college town with all the green space and the red brick or whatever,
Yeah.
sometimes that's a hard sell, but it's really hard to beat the opportunity of an urban campus and just the accessibility of the jobs, the internships, the connectedness, the culture and sporting events, things like that you mentioned. So that's very cool. When you're reviewing applications, I know that Pitt is becoming more and more selective every year. What type of student are you looking for? I know you mentioned to me earlier before we started, like you're truly into the holistic review process, but like give me the type of student that you think would make a really good fit at Pitt.
I like that question. I do get asked this question sometimes at college fairs, which I love. So I think students who are successful at Pitt are the students who are really curious about the world. They have maybe a question they want to answer, something they want to learn more about, and want to know how they can take that information or that research and apply it to the real world. We've always been kind of known for our strength in academics. We have so many robust research opportunities. So we're looking for students who are kind of ready to take on those challenges. We're also a big believer in community at Pitt. I would say whether it's attending football games, joining a club, supporting each other inside and outside the classroom, in research labs, and all different types of collaboration across campus. Sometimes students ask me, "Is it a competitive environment at Pitt? Is it going to be sort of neck and neck with other students to get research opportunities and things like that?" And so one of the things I like to share with students is that it's not going to be that, cutthroat kind of competitive feel at Pitt. There's so many opportunities for students across all of our colleges, all of our research labs, a lot of our faculty members doing their own research as well. And so really kind of that community environment, I think, is definitely something I want students to consider if they're interested in being part of.
Okay, that's great. I type while you speak so I can take notes because then I transcribe this all into a really handy like fact sheet for our team. So then if we have students that are interested in Pitt, they can be like, what did they say about this? But hopefully they'll watch it as well because we post all these to our YouTube channel. What trends are you seeing at Pitt as far as maybe particular majors or maybe admissions trends that you're seeing from um, out of state or certain populations? Can you speak to that a little bit?
Yeah, I would say definitely seeing an increase in out-of-state applications. I think as Pitt is becoming more well-known kind of across the country, we're seeing a lot more out-of-state applications. We also have, an increase in our regional admissions counselors. So people like me who live outside of Pittsburgh and work with students from all over the country. So I think that's definitely a reason for seeing more of those out-of-state applications. In terms of trends as far as majors, I would say anything in our health professions. That's kind of one of the things we're really well known for, nursing, pre-med, those types of things. So we're kind of continuing our legacy in health professions, and I think a lot of students are really interested in those programs. As far as other application trends, I would say we're also seeing a lot of students trend toward test optional. So we're going to be test optional through 2028 as of now, and then we'll kind of reassess based on sort of 6-year graduation data as we've been test optional. And so we're hoping to learn if, that impacts graduation rates at all. And if we're finding that it does impact graduation rates, either negatively or positively, kind of make a decision from there. But right now we're seeing a lot of students, particularly in arts and sciences, apply test optional and kind of focus on other strengths in their application.
Okay, that sounds good. For any of your programs, is a test required? Like for maybe a nursing or an engineering, is there any type of benchmark for the test? Or is it truly test optional across the board?
Yeah, good question. So on our admissions website, we have something called a class profile where you can see for each of our first year entry schools. So for engineering, for business, for arts and sciences, what our middle 50% GPA is, SAT scores, ACT scores, things like that. And it also shows the percentage of students who are applying test optional. So you can get a sense of kind of your peers in those colleges. And so none of the colleges require tests. We don't require test scores for scholarship consideration either, which is really nice. So if students choose to apply test optional, we'll focus more on their academic history, extracurriculars, essay, things.
Okay, perfect. Um, let's talk a little bit about demonstrated interest. So we were just talking about a student that I have that just visited last weekend. Is that something that you take into account? I know you're a larger university, so does it matter if a student has visited, loves you guys, has season tickets for football, has a parent that maybe had attended? Does that play into any of your decision making?
Good question. So we track demonstrated interest in the sense that, we can see on your profile if you've attended a campus visit, if maybe you've attended a high school visit where I came to your high school and spoke with you, if you've talked to one of us at a college fair, anything like that. But we don't necessarily consider it as part of the application process. It just helps us understand kind of how familiar students are with Pitt if they visited, things like that.
Okay, so not heavily considered, but it's taken into account, like if a student.
Sure.
Okay, okay. From your experience, I know you said you're regional, you're out of the Columbus, Ohio area. I'm wondering if you have a pulse on maybe what major right now is flying under the radar. Like, is there a major that's like, that's a really cool major, and I feel like we don't put enough emphasis on it, or people don't know about it, and it's really unique, or we're really good at this?
So one major that I've seen get a little bit more interest recently, something that I don't think we've historically gotten as much interest in, is our architecture program. So we have both a Bachelor of Science in Architecture as well as a Bachelor of Arts in Architectural Studies. So kind of depending on what pathway students are looking for, intended to kind of prepare students to apply to a master's program in architecture. And I just think it's a really cool program. It's not something that every college has. So the fact that we do have it, I think is really cool. Also in the Dietrich School of Arts and Sciences, we have a museum studies major. Again, not something every school has. Both architecture and museum studies offer students a lot of really cool hands-on opportunities, experiential learning, internships, things like that. And then does prepare them if they want to go on to the master's level, either in like a museum studies, a public history, or an architecture program.
Okay, that's really interesting. I love I mean, where you're located in Oakland, you're so close to the museums. I mean, they're on
Yes.
campus essentially, so that's really interesting. I had a talk with a rep that was here in Cleveland a few months ago, small little private liberal arts school up in Rhode Island, and they have preservation science. So it's like artifacts for museums, like how that's all handled. So I'm sure there's an element of that in like the museum studies piece, but I'm like, that's a really niche major. For your architecture programs, is there a portfolio required?
Good question. There's not a portfolio required, but they will build a portfolio during their time at Pitt to take on to a master's program if that's what they decide
So
is
not
the right.
for admission, but we'll build one for a master's, but we'll build one at Pitt. Awesome. Another question, which I know the answer to, but I would love for you to explain is, do you have an honors program and what is the criteria?
Yeah. So we do have an honors program. It's called the Frederick Honors College. It has three different, I call them like tiers of involvement. So students can have an honors distinction in their degree. They can get the full honors degree, so kind of a joint degree with their home school and the honors college, or they can pursue kind of the highest level, which is the Bachelor of Philosophy degree. We're one of only a few universities in the country that offers the BPhil. And basically students complete an undergraduate research thesis under the advisement of a faculty member to earn that Bachelor of Philosophy degree. So they'll actually defend the thesis sort of like you would do with a master's degree. So students interested in research, I think, really benefit from that. Students interested in going on to graduate study, I think, really benefit from that. But even if you don't decide to do kind of that most robust option, I would say our honors college provides a lot of advising and mentorship in all different areas, not just research, fellowship opportunities as well. I know we have a lot of students go on to very prestigious fellowships from the honors college. So students can apply during the regular application process. There's basically a box on the application to check that says, yes, I'm interested in honors. And then they'll have a 500-word essay, 3 different prompts to choose from. We don't have specific GPA or test score requirements for our honors students, but typically our honors students will have somewhere between like a 1450 to 1500 SAT, 32 to 33 ACT, and then a 3.8 unweighted GPA. That's not a
Okay.
hard and fast rule. We consider students holistically for honors as well. That's just kind of the trend that we're seeing in terms of the numbers. So students can apply on the regular application. If they decide not to apply, or maybe they don't get into the honors college during their initial application, they can apply once they earn their first GPA.
Okay. So can apply after enrolling at Pitt after the first semester?
Yeah, as soon as they get their first GPA.
Okay, cool. And are there any additional perks? You kind of alluded to that, like you said, priority. Is there priority advising? Is there housing? Is there a stipend, or you know what I mean, any type of extra experiences that the honor students get to engage in?
Yeah, definitely. So as I mentioned, they get a lot of personal mentorship in research and academic advising. They do get priority registration for classes. There are also some special honors college scholarships that they can be considered for as well. And there is an honors living learning community that students can be a part of, which I always highly recommend. I was in my honors, living learning community back when I was in college, and I always think it's a really nice way for students to kind of start building their community on campus.
Yeah, I agree. I think that's a really good way, especially at a larger school, to get acclimated and find your people off the bat. Um, all right, that sounds great. So, do you have any extremely niche programs like an alternate start? So, if a student maybe wants to come to Pitt and perhaps they're like under the benchmark a little bit, is there a way that they can go to a different campus and then transfer in, or do you have campuses abroad? We've seen that a lot more recently to kind of handle enrollment management, is that like Northeastern, they've got campuses in New York and London and Oakland. And if you can make it past the first semester, then you can migrate into the Boston campus. Anything like that, that like a alternate pathway into Pitt?
So we have 3 regional campuses in Pennsylvania, Greensburg, Bradford, and Johnstown, all different distances from Pittsburgh itself. So if maybe a student is slightly under the benchmark for like, let's say GPA or just academics, maybe they aren't quite up to like a calculus level for a business major or something like that, they will typically be offered admission to one of our regional campuses. Students sometimes really find that they love the regional campuses, kind of that smaller environment, but you still get the strength of, its academics and research programs. Or students may decide to transfer to the main campus. Typically after the completion of about 30 credits, it depends on which program they're interested in, but typically after about 1 year or 2 to 3 semesters, they can typically transfer to main campus if that's something they're interested in. They can also apply directly to the regional campuses. So if they know for sure that one of the regional campuses might be a better fit, or for example, our Bradford campus has kind of a forensics program, more of like a CSI crime scene type program that our main campus doesn't have. And so I always encourage students who are interested in something unique to see if our regional campuses have that opportunity for them. So they can apply directly to the regional campuses, or they may be offered regional campus admission. We always ask students to rank their campus preferences on their application. So if we can't offer them admission to main campus, we can try to offer them admission to their regional campus of choice.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. We talked a little bit about honors. So we've got students that are, extremely academic and really looking for that push. But I feel like every campus has some form of accessibility services, disability services. But do you have anything that is kind of like outside the typical offerings? So, I mean, I feel like I asked this, like, we have a learning center, we offer tutoring, like, which is great. But anything that's like a fee-based program or like an executive functioning coaching program, anything that's kind of outside the scope of typical like, academic assistance.
I would say so in our student success hub, we have some of those, kind of typical things that you would expect, writing center, math center. There are also various resource labs, throughout the different colleges for, supporting chemistry or physics or those, kinds of things. But within the student success hub, they have what we call like a study lab. And so students can go and meet with basically like a study skills advisor. So they can learn how they study best, what different types of, kind of study skills they might want to acquire, different habits to start building, so they can sort of learn how their brain works best in terms of studying. Do they need background noise? Do they need it to be totally quiet? Do they need to kind of body double with another student to get work done? They can also access spaces in there for group projects, collaborate with other students and faculty members. And so I think the study skills lab is really cool because it's something that I think for a lot of students, especially those who are really academically proficient in high school, it's probably not something they've ever really thought about, because sometimes high school is just like, yep, we're good, we're good to go. And then you get to college and it's just a different environment. You don't have kind of that rigid, I go to this class and this class and this class, and then I go to lunch, and then I go to this class, and then I go home. Classes spread throughout the day, throughout the week. You have to figure out, is my roommate loud, and do I need to go to the library to study? Like all of these sorts of things that you have to take into consideration that I think high school students maybe have not had to think about necessarily. So I think that the study skills lab is something that's pretty cool that we offer.
That's great. Yeah, so much more autonomy and independence, and that's really hard to navigate because you want to figure it out on your own. But if you don't know the resources, the skills, or like what's available, that's really challenging. And
Absolutely.
as we're working with students right now, obviously to transition, many of our students have deposited and they know exactly where they want to go. I noticed this last year with a crop of my Estrella students that, a lot of them required accommodations and they were very forthcoming about that, that they were on a 504 and IEP. And for those of you that are watching, like that's not always transferable. Like, so they can't just automatically be like, oh, you were on a 504 or an IEP at your school. We will take those accommodations right with you to college. Like, no, that doesn't happen. So a student must advocate for themselves. So if I know this about a student that they were, requiring some additional help, as soon as they know where they're going, we are directing them before they even graduate to the services department, whether it's accessibility, disability, if you have even dietary restrictions, things like that, like let's get that all in order. So then it doesn't take you navigating it on your own, bombing the first test, feeling really overwhelmed, anxious, depressed. Like, let's just have that all ironed out before you even go to college. So that will be something that I will note for any student that's interested in Pitt that might need a little bit of extra support or just kind of getting their footing before they attend. Um, as far as, again, more services and extra support, do you offer LGBTQ plus support, gender neutral housing? Like I feel like a lot of the urban campuses are pretty like open-minded and accessible about things like that, but I'd love to hear any additional feedback that you have about it.
Right. So Pitt is incredibly inclusive for the LGBTQIA population. We consistently earn a 5 out of 5 in the Campus Pride Index, which is a really great tool for students to use if they are looking for institutions that they know will support them and have services for them. We have gender neutral housing. We have options for students to use their preferred name or their chosen name. We also have a lot of student organizations for both undergraduate and graduate students, as well as faculty and staff members. And so that's something that I think is really neat, is that faculty and staff can identify themselves as part of the community, so that students kind of know who their allies are and where they can go to get support. And so that's, I think, something unique that we do as well.
Great. That's good. Yep. That was my question, was do you have gender neutral housing? So you answered that, which is great. All right, man, we are really getting through these questions. These are quick and succinct, but I'm getting all the information that I need. So I actually only have 2 more questions on my list. The next one is, what is one fun fact about your university that you feel like makes Pitt unique or special? So maybe like a campus tradition or just like something, again, that makes it kind of stand out that people might not know about Pitt.
So I do have a brand new hot off the presses fun fact to share, which is that last week we were named by Forbes magazine as one of the new Ivies. So essentially, they surveyed executives at companies who were saying they're more likely to hire graduates from public universities as opposed to Ivy League universities, just based on the experiences that they've had in college and their internships and their experiential learning and things like that. So we are a brand new addition to this list from Forbes magazine, the only Pennsylvania university on the list. So that's something that I think is really cool, for students who are looking for those academically challenging universities. We're kind of officially on the list. So that's pretty cool. Another fun fact, kind of our historical fun fact, is that Jonas Salk developed the polio vaccine at Pitt, which was kind of the start of our School of Public Health, really back in the 1940s. And so I think that kind of really set the stage for future research in public health and kind of made Pitt really well known for innovations in community health.
That's great. Very cool. Fun fact. I did not know that. Okay, so my last and final question is, who has been, and maybe hopefully you know this, but again, if you're a regional, it might be a little bit harder, but your most exciting guest or speaker on campus, or if that's too hard, your most interesting alumnus, in your humble opinion?
Question. So yes, as you mentioned, I am regional, so I don't necessarily get to see all of the cool stuff that happens on campus every day. But I can tell you about some cool alumni that we have. The first person I always think of is Dan Marino, who played for the Miami Dolphins, one of the greatest NFL quarterbacks of all time, played football at Pitt, is a Pitt alum. So I always talk about that. Damar Hamlin, who currently plays for the Bills. Yeah,
I'm
exactly.
a huge Buffalo, like a huge, massive Buffalo Bills fan. So when you said Dan Marino, I was like, ew,
Like,
because he's a Miami Dolphin. But
yes,
DeMar Hamlin, yes, I'm on board with this.
yes.
So way to come back on that one.
Exactly. So we've got Damar Hamlin, we have Kenny Pickett, who was just with the Eagles when they won their championship and has now been traded to my team, the Cleveland Browns. So we're going to see if maybe he gets to start this year.
Yeah,
And
the
so
chances are high.
exactly. So I'm hoping for some success for Kenny Pickett. And so a lot of famous football alumni from Pitt. But I would say, aside from that, Fred Rogers, Mr. Rogers' Neighborhood, is a Pitt alum from one of our graduate programs. He also filmed his show in Pittsburgh. And so I know that kind of the newer generation of students might not be as familiar with Mr. Rogers as we are, very much from my childhood. But I think that it's really cool that he was a Pitt alum and just such a figure in the Pittsburgh community.
Very good. Well, those were wonderful answers, and I love the diversity that we bounced back from all the sports people, because I do think that's usually like easier ones to identify. And Pitt has such a pedigree of like fantastic basketball players as well, so you could have gone down that rabbit hole too. But I appreciate Mr. Rogers. It's a good one to end on because he is, hopeful and helpful and, compassionate. So that's always a good note to end on. But thank you so much, Allie, for your time. I really appreciate it. It was wonderful meeting you. If you have questions about Pitt or want to connect with Allie, even if you're not in Ohio and you're watching this, I'm sure she'll point you in the right direction. But thank you so much. And hopefully you will be on campus with those beautiful flowers here in the next few weeks. And again, thank you so much for your time.
Awesome. Thanks for having me.
Take care. Bye-bye.